10 random magic cards rated, day number 233, I think. I've been wrong before. I'm recording this right after I record Monday's Tarkir Dragonstorm spoilers, but this one will be up first, so enjoy it. First card of the day on a Monday is Proficient Pyro Dancer, which is an uncard, so I'm not going to look at it. This is Arashi, the Sky Asunder is our actual first card. Originally from Saviors of Kamigawa, and then reprinted in Commander 2021, but still really cheap to pick up. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 green for a 5/5 Legendary Spirit. You can pay X green and tap Arashi to have it deal X damage to target creature with flying. You can also channel this, pay X and 2 green and discard it to have it deal X damage to each creature with flying, which is probably better, all things considered. But, you know, a 5 mana 5/5 is, well, it's not good anymore, but it's not a low power and toughness. And it can just kill flyers, which is not something that a whole lot of green cards can do turn over turn. Green cards can do it, but kill a flyer every turn is actually pretty powerful. The ability's at instant speed, too, so I can't hate this too much. I really can't. So I will give this a 4.6 in the modern day. I think that this probably used to be better looking than it was when Magic cards weren't so broken. But, you know, in the long ago, I could see this being a card you'd play in Commander. Also, it's great art. Kev Walker always does a good job, but look at him. Look how cool he looks. But we'll move on to Elga, Skittish Seer. That is a mess of a Magic card, so this is how it's supposed to look. 3 mana, Bant colors, green, white, blue for a 1/3 legendary frog druid. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4 or greater, you draw a card, you gain a life, and you put a +1/+1 counter on Helga. You can also tap Helgs to add X mana of any color, X being Helga's power. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells with mana value 4 or greater, or creature spells with X in their mana cost. That is so many words. So many words on a Magic card. See what I mean? They're busted now. Magic, this is a lot less simplified than the card we just looked at, but it's a lot better in a lot of ways too, you know? Like, good as a commander, but good in the 99 of a lot of Bant decks too that play like large-ish creatures. Drawing a card is always good. The life gain is negligible, but you could be doing something with it. And of course, she gets larger whenever you cast a big dude, which is good with her tap ability, right? Being able to tap her down to potentially spend, 2-3 mana on casting ever larger creatures and drawing cards every time you do so is actually a really good engine. I've always liked this card. It hasn't really found its place in Standard, and that's very likely because Up the Beanstalk is 10,000% better in a lot of ways. Cost less mana, easier to cast, whatever. You don't have to only cast creatures with that, right? So it's less removable. This can be cut down in Standard. So in a format that is, hostile to it, which is most formats, it's not going to be great. In Commander, even though it's boltable and all those metrics still apply, I think that it's just a much better card, especially to play out of the command zone. So that's going to do some lifting for it here and improve its score more than it probably should. I'm going to give this a 5.8. And I mean it. Fans of the show will know that's actually a higher score than they probably anticipated for a card like this. But I just think this card's waiting to be cracked. This first line of text, the first 2 lines of text on the card. Disregard all other text. The first 2 lines of text. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4 or greater, draw a card. Awesome. It's not restricted to once a turn. It just is. So I think this card's actually pretty good. But we'll move to, oh my God, it's Wheel of Fortune. It's the unlimited one too. It's the best looking version of it ever printed. This is a pretty, you can throw tomatoes at me for this, but I think that not every card, but a lot of cards look better in unlimited with the white border than they do with the black border from beta or alpha. Like this one's from alpha. That card looks beautiful. Don't get me wrong. It's a beautiful Magic card. I'd rather own this one. It's $500. If you want it from revised, it's $300. That's so great. This card should not cost that much. It really should not cost this much. In case you're uninitiated, this is 3 mana. I love this art so much. This is 3 mana. 2 and a red for a sorcery. Both players must discard their hands and draw 7 new cards. So not only are you probably not on any cards. You're probably on 0 or 1 cards in your hand besides wheel. So you just draw 7 new cards for 3 mana. But your opponent might want their cards. Formulated their whole game plan around their cards. They're trying to get to that 4 or 5 drop or whatever they have in their hand. But they have to drop those cards and instead get 7 new cards. That they still get fresh cards, right? So it's still bad in that way. Your opponent will very likely get to use their new cards first, unless you're very late in the game, which is often when you want to cast Wheel of Fortune in 1v1s. But in Commander, this card is completely busted. You know, you really don't mind the windfall effect and saying go and letting your opponents do stuff some of the time. And obviously, same principle applies. If you cast Wheel of Fortune on turn 8 or whatever in Commander, then you've still got a million mana to cast all the new stuff you got with it. So a fresh hand for 3 mana is just unheard of. It really is. I still contend this card should not be worth this much. It really shouldn't. I don't care if it's reserve list. It really should not be worth this much. It should be much more accessible. When I was growing up, I know it's back in my day, dog, but still, this card was under glass at the card shop for years, for $10. And nobody bought it, for that matter. Or at least nobody bought the entire stack, right? They always had another Wheel of Fortune to put under glass. But for the majority of my Magic playing life, this card was $10. And then, you know, Commander starts becoming a thing. Suddenly, this card's $300. Reserve list speculation starts becoming a thing. This card's $300. So I'm still a little salty about that, and I don't have any of the multiple copies of Wheel of Fortune that I used to own, and I probably will never own another one ever again. But this is probably the best card we'll look at today, unless something just ungodly happens when we finally get Black Lotus or something. So I want to throw it to you guys, but I think it's pretty easy to just give Wheel of Fortune a 9.4. Is that too high? Is it? But, you know, again, we're rating for casual Commander, and this is a CDH card. You know what I mean? So I'll give this a 9.4. I really don't want to go any lower. This is a personal favorite of mine, and you don't really see a whole lot of personal favorites of mine that are also broken Magic cards, and this is in that camp. I'll never get tired of looking at this art. Look at this tree. Look at this wheel. Look how rudimentary it is, and yet perfect. Look at this guy. Look at this guy over here with his coat. It's perfect. Perfect Magic card, really is. One more thing, you know, I was talking about this the other day with Wall of Flame, but this looks like a Magic card. More than even other Magic cards of that time period. This is what I think of when I think of, like, what does a Magic card look like? It's this. Anyway, Wall of Air is up next. Pretty terrible. This is originally printed, God knows when. Yeah, it's original, right? Yeah. Originally printed in the long ago. 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue for a 1/5 wall with flying. That is the entire card. I have been, in my Magic life, stopped cold by a Wall of Air. I have had nothing I could possibly do. I've had no recourse against a single Wall of Air on the other side of the table. In a real 1v1, 60 card decks, not draft. Very early in my Magic playing life, this card has just like completely stopped me, which is not something I love to admit. Love this Richard Thomas. Well, I won't say I love Richard Thomas, but I do like the way this art looks. Richard Thomas, on the other hand, don't look him up. He's awful. He's not a good person. And I feel very comfortable saying that. Richard Thomas is awful. But anyway, the art is good. And the wall itself is not. So I'll give Wall of Air a 1.3, and it gets that extra 0.3 of a point because it has technically bodied me before. We'll move on to Forest. Good looking Forest here by John Avon. You could probably say that about a lot of forests. Seismic Shift is actually up next from Dominaria, but it's already been reprinted on the list in case it needed that. 4 mana, 3 and a red for a sorcery. Destroy target land. Up to 2 target creatures cannot block this turn. So what I want to talk about with this card is how they have a limited number of list slots whenever they do a list, right? So why ever would you put this card on the list? What's the point of the list? Am I missing something about what the list is supposed to do or be for? I thought it was to get copies of not necessarily like, expensive cards, but cards that had only been printed once that you are likely to put into a deck somewhere, right? Like somewhat desirable cards that haven't been printed enough get printed on the list. And I guess it hasn't been printed more than once, but it was printed in a set not that long ago. Dominaria 2018. So I guess it's just needed a list reprinting like so bad as people were clamoring for it in Commander. I don't think so. So maybe I'm just wrong about what the stated purpose of the list is, but I don't think it's to reprint stuff like this. I really don't. I feel like this already exists with a different name. But Seismic Shift, the card itself, I really don't like unless they're extremely good, and I don't know that I can name one right now. I really don't like Stone Rains that cost 4 mana. We'll give you a little extra value. We just can't print a 3 mana Stone Rain. It has to be 4 mana with extra value. And the extra value is always like piddling. And sometimes in limited, I guess this can get you through, but it's just pretty bad. It's bad. I'll give it a 1.8, something like that. And move on to Temporary Insanity from Torment. It was also printed in dual decks, Knights versus Dragons. But those are the only 2 printings of this card. And that said, it's worth about 10 to 15 cents. This is 4 mana, 3 and a red for an instant. Untap target creature with power less than the number of cards in your graveyard and gain control of it until end of turn. Creature gains haste till end of turn. So it's a threatened effect that you have to work for and costs 4 mana. This is really bad. Just given the breadth of other threatened effects that we have in the game of Magic, most of which at 4 mana come with extra value. You don't have to jump through hoops, right? So pretty terrible. In context, I have to give this like a 1.1. It's not fresh. So we'll move on to Perilous Landscape here. We have done this cycle of lands, I believe, before. These are originally printed in Modern Horizons 3, but they're also going to be in Tarkir Dragonstorm Commander. So these are kind of like the new Capenna lands or like Evolving Wilds or something, but you can also cycle them away for their 3 mana associative cost. I don't know if we have done these now that I look at them. It's cool that they come into play untapped, right? And you can tap them for mana. Most fetch lands don't tap for mana or come into play tapped, right? This does neither. So they also don't slap cycling on every land, which is always good. Cycling a land's always good. So I guess if I had to score these, because the more I look at it, the more I don't remember scoring this specific cycle of lands. I will give this a 6. I will give this a 6.5. Sure. These are very good lands. These really are. I tend to give lands high scores. You've noticed that. You've discussed it at length in the comments. You're right. I do. Lands are good. We'll move on to Stalwart Valkyrie from Kaldheim here. 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 3/2 Angel Warrior. You may pay 1 and a white and exile a creature card from your graveyard rather than pay this guy's mana cost. This thing has flying. So if you're doing it correctly, you want a 2 mana 3/2 flyer. But having to jump through those hoops is, all you get's a 3 mana or a 2 mana 3/2 flyer. Doesn't do anything else. It's just that. I guess the fact that it's an angel gives it an extra pop in Commander because people love building angel decks in Commander, and you are kind of low on options that don't cost much mana. So this could technically be one of those. I like that. I also like that she's wearing a snake. She's wearing I think a couple of snakes, actually. You don't see that every day. An angel with a snake, that's cool. But still, I will give this a 3.5. I think that's about where she sits. She's all right. Next is Crackling Triton from Theros. Man, we are really making up for hitting that Wheel of Fortune earlier, aren't we? This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 Merfolk Wizard. Pay 2 and a red and sacrifice him to have him deal 2 damage to a creature or a player. It says any target in the Oracle text. Pretty lame. Don't love a 3 mana 2/3, but I do like a creature with a removal ability on it. The problem is it's going to cost you a turn to play the creature, and it's going to cost you most of a turn to play the removal spell as well. And if you want to play both in the same turn, congratulations. 6 mana shock. How good is that, really? This card is a penny. It's only ever been printed once. 12 years ago. And it is 1 penny to get your hands on this. That is, people are really rushing to grab it. I will give Crackling Triton, though. I'm not going to be too hard on him. I'll give this a 3.1. Actually, no. I'll give him a 2.9. He won't breach into 3 territory, but he's all right, man. He's not, give him a break. We'll move on to Martial Glory here from Gate Crash originally, but it's been reprinted in some stuff. This is 2 mana, red and a white for an instant. A creature gets +3/+0 till end of turn, or a creature gets +0/+3 till end of turn. This too has a list printing. Why? Why does it have a list printing? With this one, like for instance, it's reprinted in Double Masters 22. You could convince me that it's because even in a Masters set, you need good combat tricks. And this is a very good combat trick. Traditionally, in Limited, this was, and I did play Great Gate Crash Limited. I went to 2 pre-releases. And this tended to be a decent card in Gate Crash Limited, as far as pump spells went. Protects you from bolts and, saves a creature in combat when otherwise it wouldn't be. So altogether, decent. The list, however, I guess it can pop up as a combat trick in draft. I guess it can because it's on the list. But even then, it's why are you wasting a list slot on this? But decent combat trick in Limited. I will give this a like a 3.2, just as far as combat tricks go. It's always been solid. But we'll move on to Island. Good Island by Minyum here. It is. But wait, actually, can we F11 here? Can we F11? Because I have something to say about this island that I just want to bring up very, very quickly. You know what this reminds me of? Wave Race 64. This island right here, you come around this bend and then you have to go under this rock formation with your wave runner. This is some straight up Wave Race 64 vibes. But next, Berserker's Frenzy here from Forgotten Realms Commander. 3 mana, 2 and a red for an instant. Cast a spell only before combat or during combat before blockers are declared. So only before blockers. That means it's probably bad. So you roll 2 d20 and ignore the lower roll. Okay, so you get a free roll. 1 through 14, choose any number of creatures. They block this turn if able. Okay. And 15 through 20, you choose which creatures block this turn and how those creatures block, which is funnier, but I still hate effects like this. I really do. They're funny, they're cute, but these tend to, in my experience, rot in your hand for a good portion of the game, even when they're usable. You still want to wait for a better time, or maybe I'll have a couple of other large creatures, or maybe they'll play a couple of other small creatures, and you just wait and wait and wait. And maybe that's a me thing, but even when you cast them at the perfect time, I just feel like that slot could have been used better in most decks. And this is like $1.50 to buy, so somebody's putting it somewhere, I guess. Maybe, but all things considered, man, I'm not a big fan of provoke effects, and even though red used to have some of them back in the early days, it's kind of a forgotten part of the color pie in red and black for that matter. There's a reason that we left those effects behind in the past, because they're just both not very good, even when they are practical, and just not very practical 80% of the time. So I gotta kind of ding Berserker's Frenzy here. Maybe some of you out there think it's a great card, but I'm just gonna give this a 3.6, and even that I think is very generous, to be honest with you. But we will move on to the final card of the day. It is Masked Admirers from Lorwyn. I used to love this guy, man, even though after a while this got cut from the Elves deck in Lorwyn Standard because it cost too much mana. But it's pretty good, dude. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 green for a 3/2 Elf Shaman. When it comes into play, draw a card. Whenever you play a creature spell, you may play 2 green. If you do, return Admirers from your graveyard to your hand. So an elf that draws a card when it ETBs, like an Elvish Visionary, but can come back from your yard, unlike an Elvish Visionary, and unlike most elves for that matter. So if you have extra mana in the late game, and you do in your elves deck, then you play a creature, you pay a couple of extra mana, and you get a second creature. You get more board presence, which is what elves always wants, is more board presence. And you're kind of daring your opponent to kill this, or God forbid, trade with it in combat. You take out one of their creatures. It already paid for itself by drawing a card. You can play it again later and draw another card, and just great stuff in the trenches, right? Nowadays, I could see this costing too much for Commander Elves, because most, Elves and Commander cost 1-2 mana, and all your Anthems cost 3, and that's more or less where your curves stop, except for very expensive, instant sorceries, stuff like that add to your Elf game plan, your Elf Ball plan. So this kind of doesn't fit in with the fact that you want very expensive in-game bomb cards and very, very cheap Elves. This is neither one of those. Right. Again, this is a much more turn over turn, trenchier kind of card. But I do have good memories of it from back in the day. I will give this the honorary 5 because I feel like I haven't passed one out in a few days. And this is a card I've always had a lot of love for. And even though in 2025, I don't think it's where it needs to be. Not at all. It is still cool. Anything that comes into play and draw a card, I'm going to have, positive things to say about. I guess we'll put it that way. But that is all for today, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be out with them Tarkir Dragonstorm spoilers for today very soon. Just sit tight. Love you. Bye.